let's get into the Bond's motivation, right? Because we're right on the heels of You Only Live Twice with our big reveal of Blofeld.
Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Finally seeing the head of Spectre. I mean, they make it really personal. There's some weird stuff in this movie in terms of, chronologically speaking, like, why does he care so much about finding Blofeld? I get that for the last bunch of movies, Blofeld was behind everything.
Of course, Spectre.
That maybe he would be so motivated, but it was never personal. So it's weird that suddenly it's personal for Bond out of nowhere.
Does this mean you've lost confidence in me?
It feels like it would be more appropriate that after Tracy was killed, that Bond would go through the stuff like, well, if you're not going to let me keep finding Blofeld, then I'm going to resign. You know, that would make more sense than with this. He's just like, well, it's kind of a must with me. Why?
Why does Bond give this much of a about Blofeld? Obviously, after this movie, it makes a ton of sense for why Bond is like,
yeah.
I'm out
and
to
again,
get Blofeld.
I said this before, but I'll restate what I said. That it's been 2 years. Again, like Bond always seems to get his man fairly quickly. Usually. And also on top of that, like the last 5 movies of or at least, 4 of the last 5 movies, let me correct that, have established that there's this organization that is Spectre that is basically his true enemy. And the leader, the head of this enemy, the head of this squid is Blofeld. And so for him to
That's all well and good, but then enter Bond in this movie and he's not doing a goddamn thing about it. He just so happens upon Draco.
Basta! Where is Ernst Stavro Blofeld?
This movie supposedly has this theme of Bond wanting to leave the service and settle down, but he also wants to get Blofeld, but he also seems completely apathetic to Blofeld and to Tracy. It's like it couldn't pick a lane and stick to it, and that's why it's such a mess. I mean, Bond claims he cares so much about Blofeld, but in the opening, we just see him going to casinos wasting time, and then when he's actually in the clinic with the guy he believes to be Blofeld, he's busying himself with every vagina he can find. I mean, even after he gets the lawyer information from Draco, he goes on about a dozen dates with Tracy. Like, dude, come on. I don't care what the song says. You don't have all the time in the world. Shut the hell up, Louis. It should have shown right away that he's obsessed with Blofeld to the point that we'd understand why he tries to quit MI6. In fact, it would have been better if he actually had left MI6 because then he'd be completely reliant upon Draco's organization, which would have been interesting because then Bond would have basically joined a somewhat good version of Spectre in order to take down the remains of the bad Spectre, showing just how far he's willing to go to get his man. Maybe Bond is so singularly focused on Blofeld that when Tracy's influence begins to grow, it shows just how important she is that he begins to question why he's continuing with this manhunt. At that point, maybe Draco tells him, hey, look, man, you fall in love with my daughter, why don't you just retire and I'll take care of Blofeld? But Bond's pride keeps him on the trail to the point that he's punished for this pride when Blofeld kills Tracy. You know, it's a little movie-making thing called set up and pay off.
And Blofeld sucks a huge, fat, nasty turd out of a stanky butthole in terms of being
Blofeld sucks?
In this movie,
I think this Blofeld's better.
Please go into that because, okay, Patterson, let me ask you this question to start you off.
Sure.
Better or worse than You Only Live Twice? Remember, spectrum-wise, You Only Live Twice is in the middle of the spectrum. Over here is Blofeld pre-You Only Live Twice, which is the man in the chair who never gets emotional. Then over here, we have a guy who's front and center, and you see his face the whole time, and he's a character, and he exchanges words with Bond, and
I'm still going to say worse. I'm still going to say worse. I'm going to say
please go into that.
Movie. First of all, I think mystery suits Blofeld well.
Totally.
I think bringing him to the forefront is actually bad for his character. And this was on my list of sins, and this is honestly, to me, like the most offensive part about the film. His motive for doing this makes no sense at all. No sense. If he gets what he wants, he's way more screwed than he like it actually makes his position worse. Like his plot will make his life worse than it currently is.
And so you're saying that if he gets what he wants, he can retire in like public view, essentially?
Okay, look, what is it that he wants in this movie? He wants amnesty. He wants total amnesty for all his crimes. And he wants to be recognized as the count of whatever the He actually doesn't even ask for any material gain. He just wants 2 like worldwide acknowledgments.
And how many hundred millions do you want for your services this time, Blofeld?
This time? This time the price is of another kind.
Yeah, there's no money involved, right? There's no.
So let's
we can assume that he's already rich, I guess.
So
and he just wants to get away with his money.
Now let's dig down into that. Let's say that he succeeds and they give him what he wants. You still threatened every single human being on the planet, even if you face no criminal trials whatsoever. Everybody's going to be like, you're that asshole who threatened to kill everybody on the planet. That's number one. Number two,
I have one argument to that point. Quick, Patterson, if I can't. Nobody knows him. Nobody knows who he is. He's the head of a secret organization.
Patterson, the first argument to that point, though, is that you say that every government would be against him, but this movie already establishes that the governments in this movie follow the rules. And Bond doesn't like that to begin with.
Which I agree with. I think that if he got his way, I'm not exactly sure that he wouldn't get away with it. You would need Bond to then break the law and do vigilante justice and go kill him. But I think governments would respect any mandate for like, f*** it. The governments let bad guys get away with all the time. They're not going to give a f*** as long as the sun rises the next day. Bond might go do some vigilante shit.
Yeah, but and then on top of that, the brilliance of this is that now that even if he doesn't pull shit and he's like, well, now I have amnesty, and he still pulls the trigger on his actions, well, now in the previous films, he's even talking about like, and this is headcanon, give or take, but he's always talking about, oh, there will be a new world order, you know, and I imagine at least the last film that would be Spectre.
He never asks to be put in control of shit.
But he's put in the position now that if he has amnesty and he does pull shit, that now he has legitimacy to be like, no, I'm now the ruler of the world. Look, and that's far-fetched, but I don't think he's in a worse position. I think he's putting himself out of the game in a good position. And again, I think that also goes with the theme of the story, where he is.
I want to argue that this is the worst Blofeld.
I don't think that at all.
Go ahead.
Please talk, Dans. I want to hear it.
Don't think so.
I think we stated in You Only Live Twice that we prefer the mysterious Blofeld. We don't necessarily want to see him. We want him to be the head of the organization. And while I liked the character design, mostly just the scar on Blofeld and You Only Live Twice, and I did think like the actor did well in this movie, I just thought the whole Blofeld plot didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I think one of you guys mentioned it at the beginning of the episode. Why wouldn't he just get number 2,
yeah, why wouldn't he just send his Spectre
like,
dudes to do this job?
Yeah. Why would he put it under the guise of an allergy clinic? Why would the clinic be at the top of a mountain in a like a town that's surrounded by skiers on vacation?
Yeah. It's not a discreet
and he's
location.
Skiing down the mountain.
Let me argue that first point. And I know you guys were like, well, why don't you get Spectre agents? We've seen in previous movies that Spectre agents aren't always reliable. They do stuff that he ends up finding out about.
Are they less reliable than random hot chicks from around the world?
Yeah, you just brainwashed all these random women's. There's no way they're more reliable.
I think these guys are right, though, McCurdy, that Blofeld could just as easily have paid a couple of guys $20.
I'm going to start a clinic to help people with their allergies.
I think it's an interesting story. I think the clinic's a lot of fun. I'm certainly not against the clinic solely because it's fun. But Patterson is right that you could find a bunch of homeless dudes and just be like, hey, go spray this in Zurich.
And they're not going to care.
But I think also that also goes in ties with the fear of, these women go out, they go to their respected countries, and how are we supposed to find all of these? I mean, Bond's like, well, if we destroy the source of the radio signal and all this stuff, then we can stop this whole thing from happening. But the fact that you have these, 12 gorgeous women out in these various different countries, and you have to, track down each one of them, and they have no idea what is going on themselves. I think that's scarier to me, because then you don't.
Been waste management
versus
let's
paying,
think of it though. Once you start spraying, though, like if it was like, hey, all of you chicks have this super AIDS, and I need you to start banging everybody, and that'll spread the super AIDS, that would make sense. But instead, they just have a spray bottle, and they're just going to spray the spray bottle. And once they start spraying the spray bottle, couldn't anybody do that?
It makes it fucking scarier to not be like, well, we have to listen to Blofeld now because we don't know who these women are. I mean, Bond knows.
But if they were Spectre agents, they would be anonymous as well.
I've already established why he doesn't use Spectre agents, because we know they're not always reliable. They do dumb stuff, and
these women are more reliable.
I still don't think brainwashed
they're brainwashed women that he can
brainwash the number dudes.
Brainwash your own Spectre people. I mean, essentially, that's what he did.
You can easily get them into the same room and then flash some lights in their face.
And not only would it make more sense to just brainwash your own Spectre agents if you really have to brainwash them to make sure that nobody knows who they are. Gorgeous women are going to attract attention. That's what they do. A Spectre agent is just an ugly dude.
Give super aids to a bunch of hot chicks and be like, I'm going to have my hot chicks go bang everybody in the world and spread super aids. Imagine a worse enemy for James Bond than super aids.
It makes more sense to hire someone with a rank or access to water supply.
Yeah,
or
then why not kidnap a bunch of military officers and brainwash them? Yeah. If you were about the access, then why didn't you do that?
If you have to brainwash people, why not hijack them instead of creating a clinic that helps people with their allergies so some chick can eat chicken?
Right.
What's the whole point of all of that?
I think that has linked to more to the figuring out how to create this infertility virus.
Our great breakthrough since last summer has been the confection of a certain virus omega.
Infertility.
Total infertility.
If I play devil's advocate, I will say that McCurdy's right so far as hypnotizing these chicks to do his bidding to then spread the virus is perfectly fine. Patterson's point is, why take all that time and effort to build this clinic and have this whole, whatever, your subterfuge that you're a doctor and all this shit? Why go through all that instead of just developing the virus and just going straight to delivery? Hey, I'm going to unleash this virus on the world unless you pay me or give me amnesty or whatever. Presumably, it takes him years to solve
he added 8 steps.
This allergy problem in order to do this.
And it's not like the allergy front really needs, it doesn't protect him from anything, really. There's no point in setting up this entire front operation. He goes to the world governments and tells them what he does. There was no point in the secrecy.
It was just a ploy to have a bunch of hot chicks in the movie.
And last time, his goal was global destruction by making Russia and the U.S. go to war with each other, and he almost pulled it off.
This leads to my point about his motive. If he wanted to get all of his crimes erased and basically get an agreement from all the world governments for them to just be like, okay, hands off, we won't touch you, fine. You win. And then he disappeared into the shadows, that would be an okay motive. But that's not what he does. He says, I want you to do that, but then I also want a noble title, which is going to highlight me in society.
I'm okay with that because we have billionaires all the time that get off the hook for doing shady insider trading shit. And then the government's like, I think they would just let Blofeld, hey, Blofeld,
I still think it's an ego
you're
play.
Not going to try to take over the world anymore, Dr. Evil. We'll leave you alone.
So, okay.
We'll leave you alone.
Okay,
and you're not even asking for money this time.
I mean, really, when it comes down to it, I think Blofeld's motivation is fine when compared to Bond's, which is underdeveloped and messy.